Hello, chess friends. Today I want to show you a game that I think is quite instructive because the winner follows chess principles that every player should at least know of. We'll talk about those as we go through the game. The game was played in New York in 1918, and with white was none other than third world chess champion José Raul Capablanca against Marc Fonaroff as black. Capablanca starts the game with 1 e4, and after e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, we have the Ruy Lopez or Spanish game. And after knight f6, castles d6, we are in the so-called Steinitz variation. Capa plays d4, bishop d7 to break the pin, knight c3, bishop e7, rook e1, e takes d4, knight takes d4, and now knight takes d4 again, queen takes, and some more exchanges. Bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, and black castles. All right, so 10 moves in, and Capablanca now plays the move queen to c3. At first glance, it seems he only wants to attack this pawn here on c7. Which he is, but that's not the main point of this move. Actually, the main point is to move his knight from d4, where the queen was, up to f5, which is a really nice square. So after c6, defending the pawn, he does just that, knight d4. And after knight d7, the knight comes to f5 with a little threat of checkmate here. And so black, of course, defends against the checkmate. And he plays bishop f6, and now queen g3. So notice how white has two pieces attacking the d6 pawn, the knight and the queen. So black actually has a move that saves the pawn with knight e5, and white continues to develop with bishop f4 and queen c7, rook a d1. So we're 16 moves in, and I want you to pause a little bit here and look at what white has done. He's followed all of the basic opening principles. He's castled, he's developed all of his pieces to nice squares. His king is safe, and all his pieces are active, which is very important. And I want you also to notice that he hasn't made any unnecessary pawn moves. So he hasn't been moving any of these pawns, only the two center pawns, the D and the E pawns. So I think that is one of the things that is quite instructive about this game. He just doesn't make any unnecessary moves. He's now also attacking the D6 pawn with the rook and the knight. So black defends with rook 88, and now the question is, how should white proceed? So he's followed all these principles that I talked about, but how do you play the middle game? What would you do? Well, I'm going to show you what Capablanca did, because it's the start of something quite spectacular in my opinion, quite amazing actually. He plays the move rook takes d6, even though the pawn is protected by the queen and the rook on d8, and the rook is only protected by the knight on f5. He still does this move, which is quite amazing. And let's see what happens next. Obviously, black is going to take this rook, because what else? And now the next move is not so difficult to find. It is bishop takes e5. And now look at what's going on. White gives up the rook, but he got the knight on e5 and the pawn on d6, and he's attacking the rook on d6. So what should black do? Well, if he takes the bishop, for example, with his bishop, then queen takes, of course, and now black has some real big problems here because white is threatening a couple of things. He's threatening checkmate on g7, and he's threatening to take the rook, and a move like, let's say, rook g6 simply doesn't work because then the white queen can take the black queen. So basically, to defend against the mate with a move like, let's say, f6, then the white queen can take the rook, and then white is up a piece. So after bishop takes e5, black can't really reply with bishop takes bishop. So what should black do? Well, he actually had quite a brilliant move that he missed in this game, and I'm not sure how the game would have ended had black found this move, which is queen a5. And so what's so great about this move? Well, for one thing, it's threatening checkmate in one move like this, and for another, it's threatening the bishop like this. So that's a problem for white. And how do you save both the rook on e1 and the bishop on e5? Well, there's only just one way to do it, which is bishop c3. And after bishop takes c3, b takes c3. Now black has another dilemma, which is that white is threatening checkmate on g7 and also threatening the rook, which makes the next move kind of forced, which is rook g6. But then after knight e7, king h8, takes. The computer evaluates this position as equal. So maybe Capablanca would have won anyway, but it would have been a lot more difficult for him to win from this position than from what happened in the game. So let's rewind a little bit back to the game. If you remember this position, after rook 88, Capablanca played rook takes d6, and rook takes d6, and bishop takes e5. So we've gone through why bishop doesn't work, and also why queen a5 was a brilliant reply that black missed. But what he did was an interesting try, to say the least. It was rook d1, a very interesting move because, well, black is threatening checkmate in one move. So here, obviously, you can't take the black queen because of the mate on e1. So like this, which means that white doesn't really have much of a choice other than to take the rook, which is what Capablanca did. And after bishop takes e5, we have still some very interesting moves ahead with first knight h6 check. The pawn is pinned, so the only legal move is king h8. And now I want you to pause again and see if you can find Capablanca's move in this position, which is quite brilliant and quite winning. The move is queen takes e5. Now, why would he do that? He just gave up his queen? Well, let's see what black's options are before we look at queen takes queen, which is what happened in the game. Let's say, for example, queen b6. Now there is the move queen e7, and, well, for starters, white is threatening mate in one, and white is already up a piece, and so the position is basically hopeless here for black. And what else could he try? Let's say queen c8. Now there is knight f5, which threatens mate on g7, and for example, after rook g8, then there is this move knight takes g7, and if rook takes, then queen f6, and rook d8 is coming with devastating effect. And if in this position, instead of rook g8, if you try f6, then queen e7 threatens mate on g7, and now knight d6 threatens both the queen and knight f7 with a smothered mate. So basically, this is absolutely hopeless here. So that was, after queen takes e5, that was queen c8. We already looked at queen b6 as well. And if he tries, let's say, queen b8, then there is the move knight takes f7 check. Can't take because of queen takes queen. So you would have to go king g8. But now after queen takes b8, rook takes rook d7, white is completely and easily winning with this extra piece. And so there are basically no good moves after queen takes e5 in the position that we had here. Queen takes e5, and we've looked at some options, and none of them simply work. And after queen takes queen, which is what happened in the game, what did Capablanca play next? Can you see the move? He played knight takes f7, check, and it's a fork, so it's a check, and it's attacking the queen as well. And in this position, black resigned because the position, he saw what was coming. You can't really take this. You can't really take this this knight. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so it's here, rook takes f7 because of rook d8 check, and it's gonna be a back rank mate, obviously. So also if you don't take, if you play king g8, then after knight takes e5, white is just up too much material and is completely hopeless. For example, here trying to win the e4 pawn if the knight moves, f4, and black just doesn't have anything. So if we go back one more time to this position, white had developed all of his pieces to nice squares, and that's usually when the tactics happen. That's when you've put your pieces on active squares, which is exactly what Capablanca did in this game. Before he tried anything fancy, he first developed all of his pieces, the ones that were still on the board, and as soon as he had done that, boom, the fireworks start with rook takes d6 and so forth. And rook takes, take, here, take, check, and take, and so forth. So I hope you enjoyed this game as much as I did, and I thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.